Pop quiz. You're walking in your town and a guy with a hacked up haircut calls you over and tells you he's just come back from heaven and has met God. God has just revealed to him that he is the younger brother of Jesus and he wants you to hack up your hair too. Leave your home, swear a vow of celibacy, and try to overthrow the government because they're demons. What do you do? If you said back away slowly or call Homeland Security, then you're not thinking like a South China peasant from the 1850s. And weirdly, that's what we have to do because history is people. Other people, to be exact. You're never going to understand why events bigger than yourself happen until you stop thinking, what would I do in that situation? Or even worse, getting all judgy on the people of the past because you know how events turned out. We're going to have to understand the Taiping Rebellion by thinking the way those people who created it thought. And in their case, things didn't work out very well at all. The Taiping was an attempt to turn China into a Christian utopia by overthrowing the Qing dynasty, which ruled what was then the most populated and richest country in the world. When it was over, more than 25 million people perished before the Taiping Rebellion was overthrown, most of them by starvation, although some leaders of the Taiping chose to fling themselves off the 50-foot-high walls of Nanjing. The numbers are staggering. The Taiping Rebellion was the second deadliest war in modern history, worse than World War I and behind only World War II. And the terrible irony is that a population larger than Australia died painfully trying to create a Taiping, which in Mandarin meant a heavenly peace. To understand the Taiping Rebellion, you have to understand its people, particularly this man at the center, Hung Shu-Xuan, a would-be Confucian scholar who flunked 3 consecutive Confucian civil servants exams. After the last failure, Hung abandoned the Confucian Analects for the New Testament and fell in with a European Protestant minister. There, with him, he started to go into ecstatic trances, traveling to heaven, meeting God, and getting instructions. In one, a tall bearded man with a thick belt, who turned out to be Jesus, announced that Hung was Jesus' Chinese brother and been given a divine mission to rid the world of demons, the demons happening to be the Qing dynasty. In another, Hung and a crack team of angels got their revenge on Confucius by hog-tying him, gagging him, and throwing him at the feet of God before flogging him until he screamed. These images are crazy only if you see them from today's perspective. But when you start seeing them through the eyes of the people who Hung would have preached to, they take on a shrewd sense. Take this man, the one sitting in the chair with a long ponytail. A lot of Westerners mistake that hairstyle called the Q for Chinese, but it's not. It was the trademark of the Manchurian nomads who conquered China in 1644, called the Qing. And they made all ethnic Chinese, called the Han, wear the Q as a sign of submission to their Manchurian horse gods. Many ethnic Han hated being dominated by the Manchurians, and when Hung started preaching that they were demons, their ears pricked up. Then, when Hung cut off his Q in a symbolic act that would have carried the death penalty if he had been caught, those people turned into patriotic warriors. Then there were peasants. No one in the world may have worked harder than a Chinese peasant in the 1850s. By then, every bit of arable land in China had been hacked into terraces, and peasants found themselves pushing wheelbarrows of soil and rice up thousands of backbreaking feet to eke out an existence. That left no time or money to do one of the few things that would have allowed them to move up in the Qing world, which was to take and pass the Confucian civil service exams. It took years of constant study to learn the 100,000 analects of those exams, and it was out of the possibility for most peasants. Even those people who took the exam, like Hung, failed 19 out of 20 times. For these people, Hung's call that Confucius was out and the New Testament was in meant that they no longer had to memorize or take such burdensome exams. And indeed, they could learn the New Testament, a book that carried a message that, not coincidentally, said that the meek, i.e. them, would inherit the earth. Hung also walked his walk, ordering rich landlords stripped of their property wherever the Taiping conquered, and the abolition of private property. Now look at these people. They belonged to an ethnic group called the Hakka, and they were Hung's kin. The Hakka lived communally in southern China, and today they seem more like bees than modern American families. They lived and died together, sharing what little they had. Women, too, as Hakka women traditionally had more autonomy and say than they did in larger Chinese society. You can see how they lived here in their round village communal houses that look more like rural spaceships than homes. The Hakka flocked to Hung as kinsmen, but also because his call to live as a community of selfless brothers and sisters wasn't a shocking departure from their daily lives. Indeed, it was what they did every day when they came home from dinner. The people of the past were so different from you and I that even celibacy might seem enticing to some. A Puritan at heart, Han called for a strict separation of men and women, although he himself kept a harem. But imagine yourself a girl on the verge of seeking a husband, a girl like this one. In the 1850s, if you were her, you would have needed to have tiny feet like the girl feet in these pictures. And to do that, you would have needed to fit into tiny bird shoes. But since almost no one has feet that dainty, what your mother would have to do when she was 8 or 9 was break your toes underneath the sole of your foot and turn you into a foot-bound woman with crippled feet so that you could fit into those shoes. For these girls, Hong's cry of celibacy was literally a call to freedom, meaning they no longer had to be crippled and could walk and maybe even fight on the earth. Indeed, many of them became Hong's most fervent disciples and some of the first women fighters in history. By 1853, so many people had joined up with the Taiping rebellion that it had conquered a good part of southern China, including its largest city, Nanjing. So now you can see why the poor, the angry, the dispossessed, and women in southern China might have heard Hong's call and listened. And the great gift as historians is that through the use of sources and evidence, we get to listen to them, the people who listened to Hong. We can see through people's eyes and feel what they felt because history is people. Tell that to the next person who says to you, what good is studying history? Because what government wouldn't want someone with the skill to understand why young Westerners heed the call of jihadists in the Middle East? What startup company, or educational video company for that matter, wouldn't want someone who could better understand their customers? What artists wouldn't want to understand the people they write about and write to? It's not just history that's people, it's the world. History is just a ticket into that world. What we haven't covered yet is why the heavenly peace turned into such a deadly war. To understand that, we're going to have to get into the minds of people who weren't Chinese at all. We're going to have to see the way men like this man saw, and this man, and this man, and we'll study them next.